We're looking at one of the most captivating faces in art history. Vermeer's Girl with a Pearl Earring. But there's something unsettling about this moment. Is she turning toward us or away? Look closely at her body. Her shoulders are angled to the left, as if she's already moving on. But her head has turned back suddenly to meet our gaze. It feels like an interruption. A moment caught mid-motion, as if we called her name and she turned, just briefly, to see who was there. Often called the Mona Lisa of the North, this painting has puzzled viewers for centuries. Some see innocence, others see awareness. Her lips part slightly, as if she's about to speak. But she remains silent, holding us in a moment that never quite finishes. The Girl with a Pearl Earring belongs to a Dutch tradition called tronies. This word comes from the Dutch tronie, meaning face or expression. Tronies weren't portraits of specific people. They were studies of faces, expressions, types. Artists used them to explore character, emotion, and technique without the constraints of formal portraiture. Think of it as the difference between a photograph and a character study. A portrait has a name, a history, a commission. A tronie is anonymous, experimental, intimate. Vermeer painted many quiet domestic scenes: a woman reading a letter by a window, a maid pouring milk, a music lesson in progress. In these paintings, we're observers. We look into private moments, but we remain outside them. Often, a drawn curtain in the foreground emphasizes this separation. We can see, but we cannot enter. The woman pouring milk isn't pouring it for us. The letter being read isn't addressed to us. We're witnesses, not participants. But the Girl with the Pearl Earring is different. She looks directly at us. Her eye contact is unavoidable. There's no curtain, no middle distance, no narrative to distract us. Just her face, emerging from darkness, meeting our gaze. Vermeer uses a dark, flat background, almost pure black. This technique, derived from chiaroscuro, makes her three-dimensional form appear to float in space. Light falls on her face from the left, illuminating her cheek, the tip of her nose, that luminous pearl. But the background offers no clues about where she is or what surrounds her. This absence of context is deliberate. It transforms her from a set piece in a story into a psychological presence. In many of Vermeer's other paintings, composition is everything. He demonstrates extraordinary command of perspective and foreshortening. The checkered floor tiles in the music lesson recede perfectly into space. The sightlines, mirrors, and light sources in Woman with a Balance create a precisely calibrated sense of depth. Vermeer would even adjust reality for the sake of composition. In The Art of Painting, he hides the leg of an easel behind a curtain because it disrupts the visual balance. But here, in The Girl with a Pearl Earring, all those elements are stripped away. No floor, no windows, no carefully arranged objects. Just a girl, a turban, a pearl, and that look. So who is she? Unlike formal portraits, which documented specific individuals, nobility, clergy, wealthy merchants, tronies were anonymous by design. The girl could be Vermeer's daughter, Maria. She could be a servant in his household. She could be an imagined ideal, a composite of features Vermeer found beautiful. But her anonymity is part of her power. In 17th century Netherlands, the world Vermeer inhabited was changing rapidly. After 8 decades of rebellion against Spanish rule, the Dutch Republic had emerged as an independent nation. Cities like Delft, where Vermeer lived and worked, were no longer governed by kings or controlled by Catholic bishops. This political shift had profound effects on art. Traditional patrons, the church and aristocracy, no longer dominated. In their place rose a new merchant class, enriched by global trade. The Dutch East India Company, founded in 1602, became the world's first multinational corporation. It brought spices from Indonesia, porcelain from China, and silk from India. Dutch ships sailed to every corner of the known world. This created unprecedented wealth. But not aristocratic wealth, middle-class wealth. And these merchants wanted different kinds of art. They commissioned paintings for their homes, not churches. They wanted to see their own lives reflected. Domestic interiors that looked like their own houses, objects they recognized, people who looked like their neighbors. The maps that appear in Vermeer's paintings, for example, were fashionable decorations. They signaled worldliness, education, awareness of the expanding globe. Owning a map meant you understood that Delft was just one small point in a vast, interconnected world. The turban the girl wears makes a similar statement. It's not a Dutch garment. It's exotic, oriental, probably inspired by fabrics brought back from the East. In Vermeer's time, wearing such clothing in a painting suggested sophistication, cosmopolitan taste, connection to global commerce. But the turban serves another purpose too. Its vibrant blue and yellow colors create a dramatic contrast with her skin and the dark background. Vermeer uses ultramarine blue, one of the most expensive pigments available, made from ground lapis lazuli imported from Afghanistan. Using it so generously shows Vermeer's commitment to visual impact, regardless of cost. And then there's the pearl. It hangs from her ear, catching light, appearing almost luminous. But here's the interesting thing. Vermeer couldn't have afforded a real pearl this size. Pearls of this quality were luxury items, accessible only to the very wealthy. So what are we looking at? Most likely, it's glass or polished tin, varnished to create the illusion of a pearl, a fake, a beautiful, convincing fake. And when you look closely, really closely, you see the truth. That pearl isn't rendered with precise detail. It's not a carefully painted sphere. It's essentially a smudge. 2 brushstrokes of white and gray, positioned perfectly to catch the light. From a distance, it looks round, heavy, lustrous. Up close, it dissolves into pure paint. This is Vermeer's genius as an illusionist. He doesn't paint what things are. He paints how light interacts with them, how our eyes perceive them. The pearl doesn't need to be detailed to appear real. It just needs to behave like light on a reflective surface. The same is true throughout the painting. That highlight on her lower lip, pure white paint, just a stroke. The moisture in her eye, a tiny dot of light. The soft glow on her cheek, layers of thin, translucent paint building up luminosity. Vermeer worked slowly. He couldn't have painted many pictures. Only 34 authenticated works survive, created over his entire career. He was meticulous, deliberate, obsessed with optical truth. Some art historians believe he used a camera obscura, a device that projects an image through a lens onto a surface. This would explain his extraordinary grasp of how light behaves, how colors shift in shadow, how edges soften at certain distances. But technical mastery alone doesn't explain why this painting captivates us. We can't help but construct a narrative. Who called her? What was she doing? What is she about to say? But the painting gives us no answers. It exists in perpetual potential. When the painting hangs in the Maurits Huys Museum in The Hague, visitors often stand before her in silence. There's something about that direct gaze, that ambiguous expression, that makes people feel seen, acknowledged, connected to something across 4 centuries. She represents a moment in history when art shifted away from grandeur and toward intimacy. When the subjects of paintings were no longer exclusively the powerful, but the everyday. When beauty was found not in idealized perfection, but in a fleeting glance, a turned head, a moment of human presence. In her enigmatic way, she embodies the birth of a modern perspective, an economy driven by trade, not land, a society valuing merchants as much as nobles, an art that speaks to individual human experience rather than collective religious doctrine.